Okay, so hi. Okay, so my topic is what is the Louisiana Purchase, and how I came about it is that one day my professor was telling me, "Hey, write a paper that is before 1922," and I was like, "Okay." So I put some thought into it, and I was like, "All right, what do I want to know more deeply involved into this topic? What do I want to know? What do I like see what other people have thought, their what's written articles, books written about it, like different point of views." And so I thought, hey, let's do a Louisiana Purchase. Well, I do Louisiana Purchase. And so it came to me, I was just like, okay, I want to know who was involved, who got affected, who was, I guess, traumatized by it, who benefited from it. And I was like, all right, I can go off on that. I was like, all right. But a little backstory about it is that throughout high school, we're always told, oh, this was Jefferson's big achievement, and he did this under his administration. And I was like, all right, well, I'm like, okay, I'm like, is that all I get? So I dig a little deeper, and I found out that it was mostly just like it was only both most it was mostly about Jefferson, Napoleon, and this guy named Talleyrand. But for my thesis, this is just a small example, generalization of my paperwork. And for the main players, which I was just mentioning, was Thomas Jefferson, which was the sitting president at the time, Napoleon as well as Bonaparte, King of France, and then Robert R. Livingston was literally the main guy who was a court-appointed diplomat in France. So it came to my thoughts, and I was just like, it couldn't have literally just been Thomas Jefferson. He was literally in America, sitting in the office. It couldn't have been him. Like, how could he buy land all of nowhere? So I put into thoughts. So it was actually Robert Livingston, and what he did was he bought it in France on behalf of the United States. So he was the leading person who purchased this land, and it was just an estimation of like what the Louisiana Purchase was. It was roughly 500,000 square miles of land that reached from Louisiana all the way to modern-day Montana. And it was 4 times bigger than any colony or state ever purchased. And it was purchased at $15 million in American dollars. With inflation, it was roughly around $346 million. And I'm just like, that is super cheap at 4 cents a square mile. So this had led the Lewis and Clark expedition, which was given. Sorry, hold on. Ooh. Okay, so under President Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark in the expedition that led through this frontier, this expedition of American adventure. And a group, basically, they led a group filled with translators, sailors, boatsmen, and slaves. And they also had Sacajawea with them along the ways. Sorry. So this frontier that they explored, which was only just a portion, was just Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, North and South Dakota, East and West Montana. And they had found like mountain ranges, what kind of dirt that was there, what kind of animals lived, insects, fishes, I guess terrain, I would say like terrain, like how the elevation is. And so that's what they mostly found. And also at the same time, they found different native tribes that lived in those regions, and what kind of foods that they were eating, and they interacted with, traded with. And these are just a few historian interpretations of who interpreted this Louisiana Purchase. Like, none of these men were alive during that purchase. Because they just made a book, like, not too long ago, where Richard Callahan made new territories and perspectives, and it was based on religion perspectives. While Thomas Nelson, he wrote a book and published in 2006, which challenged the Constitution and opened expansion to federal power, of how it kind of minimizes civil waste. Hey, it's okay for federal government to push aside these Native Americans that live on this land. And Sean Darrell put, in 2006, wrote this book of party politics during the Louisiana Purchase, and argued like, if both sides of government can unify, we can push these people out. And Tecumseh's War is just one of like many like examples, I would say. I wouldn't say examples, but a little bit, I would say, a piece of time. Tecumseh's rebellion was basically, let me backtrack, sorry. Tecumseh was a warrior. He was a native man. He was, he basically got enraged because his father had died from like from a soldier. He was murdered practically. And so Tecumseh basically made a rebellion against people that were trying to like kick him out. And on the array, he made a rebellion, that was made by several tribes, like the Potawatomi and the Kickapoo and the Creek tribes. Sorry. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so these tribes basically came together around modern day Ohio. So around the river bends of like near Lake near the Great Lakes, sorry. And so they formed an alliance, but they had a fight. They were, okay, so they were going and gathering together, rebelling against settlers and soldiers near the areas. But to do that, they also had to need the British alliance to fight these wars. And that was just one war because it was just a murder of one man. But they lost that war because they got cut off during, okay. Okay. They lost that war because of William Henry Harrison's army. They got basically encumbered or embarred by that. And so this also led into the Battle of Baines. So it was just one instant, but that rage from Tecumseh's rebellion went into the Battle of Baines of War, which is also called the War of 1812. And it was all the way in Ontario, Canada. And they had lost that war because the American Navy cut them off from their supplies. Like, British was on one side, and the natives were on the other side. And so the military came in, bombarded the British, and that cut off their supplies, their food, their weapons, and basically they just retreated. The British retreated, and the natives were just left on one side, and they were just having massacred. So that came to Tecumseh's death. Okay. Sauk natives were just another tribe that were affected by this purchase. They were prosperous in their land. They were also one of the largest civilized tribes in Illinois, and in 1804, the St. Louis Treaty was stated that that land was sold by the government because Andrew Jackson had passed the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This act relocated roughly 122,000 natives that lived in north and south and east of Mississippi. Military power was also used to escort natives out of their homes. The conditions they had, they weren't great. They basically got removed, like take what you can carry, put it in your bag. If you were sick, too bad, you had to go, because their homes were now no longer their homes. It was American homes. They're not homes like that we know today, where it was a 4-bedroom, 3 bathrooms. No, these were like, I guess, teepee huts. I guess 4x4 walls. And so they had to pick up they're sick, they're elderly, the children. I mean, it was some rough conditions out there. And they basically had to just up and leave because the military forced them out. And this led to the Trail of Tears, because it was also them that were, I guess, conjoined together. This Indian Removal Act removed 60,000 natives in a span of 2 decades. This act was very inconsistent about it, because the government didn't know where to put them. So I guess at the end, as an end result, it's like, where do we put these people we don't want? So that's where reservations came in. To put them in small sections of the country that no one wants to live in, no one wants to farm there. And just like, there you go. You got land, we gave it to you. And so during that travel, during the Trail of Tears, all these natives and soldiers, well, mostly all the soldiers were escorting them out. All these people were just dying from diseases, gunshot wounds, if they got shot, they starved. And it was ultimately just a mess, because they were just walking for miles and miles, and they didn't have rest stops. Only the soldiers did, like, just to alterate. You're like, okay, your shift's over, like if it was a job. And to conclude my research, Louisiana Purchase was a monumental achievement for an American. But if you weren't an American, it was kind of detrimental, saying that, hey, you're an American, you can have all these freedoms, but these people can't, because they don't talk like you, speak like you, or think like you, and they don't live like you. Lewis and Clark was also a great expedition. It also embarked a lot of adventure in people, like, expand to the west. It also brought up a lot of farmers, a lot of like people who want to start a whole new life, but if you were an American. But this also came at a cost. Since Lewis and Clark only explored like northern parts, no one ever thought about the southern parts. Natives mostly suffered from this because their land was being bought, and they were losing their homes, valuable space, and family, and they were being separated. It was very catastrophic as well, because plagues and disease were brought by settlers. Like once they started coming in, it was like they just kept a clean lifestyle. They bathed mostly regularly, and so these people that would come in, they didn't shower as much. They kind of smelled. They were messy, dirty, and they also had brought like pox, and they had brought famine. Basically other airborne illnesses that weren't native to those people that lived in that neighborhood or that land. So that kind of concludes my paper, and that's my bibliography.